We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
This is a public hearing for the subdivision of Rose Place in Abington.
You have to tell them it's being recorded.
It is being recorded and it will be on YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
For whoever would like to access. Attendance tonight, Adam Somerville, Chairman.
Brandon Griffin, clerk.
Elaine Bergeron, co-chair.
Wayne Andrews, member.
Robert Kimball, member.
We'll let him do his presentation first for ET Engineering, and then if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand. Just stand, give your name and address, just so Melissa can have it, and just let everyone say what they need. Are you ready, sir?
Yes, the best I can.
All right.
If I start slurring my speech, that's because I've been on the plane for the last 48 hours.
Oh,
Traveling all over the place for a funeral. So I'm just trying to catch up on some sleep. So I may fall over. But thank you for indulging me. My name is Whitman. I'm the Massachusetts licensed land surveyor, as well as licensed civil engineer, who is responsible for the subdivision that is before you. It's called Rose Place subdivision, right on the Whitman-Abington town line. You really cannot access the property from Whitman. But if you're familiar with the Abington, I know there was an issue about the locus of the plan that's not updated, but I wanted to keep the locus the same for a historical perspective. So you can access the property through Madison Street, right off of 123 in Abington, down to Wilbur Street, and then Doris Drive to the eastern end of the property. Back in 2009, we came before this board, as well as the Whitman Conservation Commission, the Whitman Planning Board, the Abington Planning Board, and the Abington Conservation Commission. So back then, it was a 9-lot subdivision, and it still is a 9-lot subdivision. At the time, basically, we can see a little bit more of the neighborhood in question. And at the time, we received a definitive subdivision approval for the 9 lots by the planning board, the Conservation Commission, both the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board in Abington. But what had happened was the access to the subdivision at the time was through basically similar to what you have. The town of Abington does not like a subdivision dead-end road to be more than 750 feet. So we did not have any other means of access, and by definition, you cannot have a dead end that ends on itself. So they allowed us to extend this road right through here, to Doris Drive, that's in here, involving over 48,000 square feet of wetlands filling and alteration. The Abington Conservation Commission, as well as the Whitman Conservation Commission at the time, approved it as what is called a limited access roadway, but the planning board in Abington gave us a waiver on the width of the roadway in order to minimize the impact on the wetlands. So it was approved as a limited access project. However, that project could not be constructed at the time because of a litigation that ensued relative to, if you look over here, Wilbur Street actually ended over here. At the time, the original property owner, back in, before I was born anyway, which was eons ago, this piece right here was kept under the ownership of the original landowner. Okay, but this piece right here bifurcated the land that's over here, and this little piece here owned by Mr. and Mrs. Koch. So a lawsuit ensued relative to this piece here. They contended that Mrs. Glazer did not have the right to extend that road into our property. And you know as well as I do that once you get lawyers and the courts involved, all bets are off. So it went through litigation for years, and we kept getting extensions on the orders of conditions. And then in 2010, 2012, the then governor Duval Patrick, as well as the legislature, the state legislature, as it was then constituted, approved what they called our Permanent Extension Act. Basically, it was a way of revitalizing the economy to keep the economic engine going. So the project received an extension automatically. But that carried it through 2016. So in 2016 it expired. They did not apply for an extension, and once an order of conditions expires, you cannot get an extension for it. So we had to go back to the planning board in Abington and in Whitman, conservation in Abington, conservation in Whitman. And so the Conservation Commission approved that limited access crossing again, but DEP stepped in and appealed it on its own initiative, which means that they felt that the Abington Conservation Commission erred in approving it without demonstrating beyond a reasonable doubt that there was no other means of access without filling the wetlands. So it got tied up another year and a half. So we took the correspondences from the Abington Conservation, from DEP, based on its appeal of the project, as well as correspondence that we got from the MEPA, which is the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act unit of the Executive Office of Energy and the Environment. So we went back to the Abington Planning Board and said, we are caught between a rock and a hard place. You're not allowed, you approve this right here, but DEP said no. Wetlands crossing, they did not believe that we had exhausted all our options. So we demonstrated that we didn't have any other access because we didn't control, the applicant didn't control any other lands. And there was no way you could come through here without filling the wetlands. You couldn't go that way without filling the wetlands. So we pleaded with the Abington Planning Board and showed them this layout. We eliminated this crossing to somehow assuage the concerns of the DEP and the MEPA unit of the Executive Office of Energy and the Environment. And we propose this on the idea that at least if you came down here and if this was blocked, you can go this way. If this was blocked, you can go this way. And then we also put a turnaround area here. The fire department in Abington felt that was a good layout. And it also required a waiver on the radius at this point from the planning board. So the Abington Planning Board, in light of the position that the DEP and MEPA took, felt that whereas Willow Street is a dead-end area without a turnaround area, that this, even though it's an extension of a dead-end, at least provides a means of our turnaround for even existing users. So the planning board approved it through a definitive subdivision from hearing, whereas some of the lots are in Whitman, but for the purposes of a definitive subdivision, it's the creation of a roadway. And so the roads that are being created are entirely in Abington. And so, whereas we have received the Abington Planning Board approval, we went through a rigorous review. Some of you are new on this board, but Wayne probably remembers Michael Roth was always a proverbial pain in the rear end. So he reviewed it for the Abington Planning Board. He had a bucket load of comments, like a mile long. And we went back and forth, argued back and forth. But at the end of the day, we came up with a very robust drainage plan that satisfied them. So that both the Abington Planning Board and Abington Conservation Commission approved it, and the EP withdrew its appeal of that filling because we're no longer filling. As a matter of fact, we're keeping everything at least 35 feet away from the wetlands. We've been before the Whitman Conservation Commission, even though we still have a valid order of conditions that we could get an extension for, but we felt that that order of conditions do not represent the current plan. So we filed a new notice of intent and asked them to close out the old order of conditions so that the new order of conditions could be issued based on this configuration and this layout. And so we're here before you, hoping and praying you to agree with the planning board in Abington that everything still, this represents actually an improvement over what was originally approved. And as my wife always tells me, I've had a hard time heeding her warning. She says, honey, you always like to listen to yourself and yap all the time. So I'm done yapping.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody on the board have any questions? Elaine?
Not that I can think of this minute.
All right, Wayne? Oh, Bob?
The only concern I have, and it's to the Conservation Commission, is the drainage. It looks like there's significant drainage structures on the property. So that would be my only concern. Secondly, you have one house that's completely in Whitman. Is there any reason that couldn't be partly put into Abington?
No, just wanted to give them a little bit of a depth. That's all.
Okay. Because, my concern is all these houses are going to have Abington addresses.
Mm-hmm.
But the house that's completely in Whitman potentially could send their children to Whitman School.
Mm-hmm.
And
get your tax dollar.
I'm still taxing the house.
We might get some tax dollar.
Right, but it's not right to have a child in the neighborhood have to go to a completely different town. So that's my concern, but that's all, just a comment.
No, I live in Bridgewater, but my kids didn't go to school in West Bridgewater, It's just one of those things.
Brennan?
No questions for you, sir?
All right. Does anybody in the
Public
Whitman have any questions or
Yes.
anybody here?
My name's Robert Dower. I live 7 Coholan Drive in Whitman. First time I've ever been to a meeting like this, so I don't know exactly what I'm doing. But does everybody understand looking at that map, what you're looking at, first of all? And if not, because I had the chance to look at it today, I visited the people that live on the street in Abington. So here's the line right here. Here's the line. This is Whitman. This is Abington. These are the houses. Wilbur Street is where it's coming in. But Wilbur Street isn't the only street, right? The fire department in Abington wanted another street because they wouldn't accept a cul-de-sac, correct? Mm-hmm. So there's more than one street.
Madison to your left.
Right.
To the left.
Right, so you got 2 streets. Now, just bear with me for a second. And if I'm out of line or anything, tell me, all right?
I'm nervous. Right to say your piece.
I'm very nervous, but I have laryngitis, so I apologize. I gave you my name, whatnot. I bought the house new in 1995 where we are. Nearly 30 years ago. My kids went through public schools. Everything's been great. Great neighbors, take care of my house, never complaints. Cops never been to my house, get along with everybody. I don't come to meetings. I should, but I'm not a troublemaker. So look, just hear me out for a second. And I apologize if I'm not 100% correct. But I was only given a heads up last week that this meeting was going to take place. And I found out today because I visited the residents that live on Wilbur Street in Abington. I went there literally this morning, knocked on the doors and talked to them because there's a gentleman on this side of the street and a woman who had a newborn baby on this side of the street. And then there's the dead end, like the gentleman mentioned. And there's a fence there, a wooden fence. You've probably been there, I don't know. And the gentleman told me that this has been going on since 2009,
Yes.
which is 15 years. So it leads me to believe that the builder has been twisting himself in knots trying to get a way to fit this square peg into a round hole. 15 years to build 9 houses. Something doesn't add up, and I can tell you what it is. It's wet back there. And it's almost always wet. And all through the winter, if it gets wet, that water doesn't leave till the spring. Me, my neighbors, we have water problems all the time. I'm gonna have problems. I'm gonna have towels tomorrow in my garage because of the rain we get tonight, right? So, do you mind if I read this? It'll only take me a minute, and then I'm gonna say something else. Is it okay?
Of course, yeah,
Absolutely.
please.
All right.
That's why we're here.
All right. I apologize, I had no idea this was even an issue until I got this letter last week, I think 2 days after New Year's. That didn't give me much time to be prepared for such an important issue. I took the liberty of visiting the residents of 76 and 73 Wilbur Street in Abington, the houses I referenced. They're the ones that the road's gonna go right through, into the woods, into my backyard, before the new road. One of two that would be put in. One of those nice people told me that this has been in the works since 2009. I thought that seemed strange. He informed me initially the builder was going to use the next street over. Not that street, but the next street over initially in 2009, to the point where he was gonna have to remove his swimming pool. This is what the guy told me. So I think the builder will go to any means to get this thing done. I don't know why. But that's what he told me. And he had gone to every town meeting. I saw those plans this morning on his kitchen table. He's been to every single meeting. I thought that, okay, when they realized there were wetlands, they moved over to his street. You follow me? They were gonna initially do it on this street, and then they realized how wet it was and how big the wet area was, so they moved over, I guess, to the west, I guess, towards my backyard. Hold up. I apologize. Obviously, there were many other hurdles, as it's been 15 years of hurdles, minefields, and twisting the thing like Houdini to make it fit. I have spent many hours in those woods with my kids, and one thing I know is when it gets wet back there, it stays wet. In the winter, again, I don't want to be redundant. The kid would slide on the it just doesn't drain right. I'm not an engineer, and I don't know why. I'm not a geologist, but it just doesn't drain. There are countless deer, turkey, rabbits, fox, and other animals we don't see, but we hear. Small town Whitman seems to be putting houses any place they can find. Over the years, small town Whitman seems to be putting houses any place they can find over the years, with seemingly little regard for nature, green spaces, or the climate that we hear so much about. But here's the main issue. Me and my neighbors get water now, even after moderate rain. I line my garage with old towels. My gutters go into drums filled with stone. We've tried everything. Now, from the plans I've seen, Abington is going to get the majority of the 9 houses, and me and my neighbors are going to get 100% of all the water from that area because of the detention basins that they're going to put in. Is that correct, sir? They're going to be detention basins?
I'm just waiting for you to finish your.
I'm just asking before I proceed.
I'm gonna finish your comments.
No, I want
I will answer in the context of what you're going to
Guys,
say.
okay, if there's going to be a detention basin, if there is, right, let me just tell you real quick what a detention basin is. A detention basin or retarding basin is an excavated area installed on or adjacent to tributaries of rivers, streams, lakes, or bays to protect against flooding and, in some cases, downstream erosion by storing water for a limited period of time. These basins are also called dry ponds, holding ponds, or dry detention basins. The basins are typically built during the construction of new land development projects, including residential subdivisions or shopping centers. The ponds help manage the excess urban runoff generated by newly constructed impervious surfaces such as roads, parking lots, rooftops. Now, are there any problems with detention basins? Wait till I'm done, I guess. Here's some. They create an eyesore that will decrease property values. They attract mosquitoes. They neglect to improve water quality. They require a sizable amount of land. They are not the most predictable or visually appealing stormwater solutions. And some of the other problems are the water has to get into these basins and it has to exit these basins. They act almost like a leaching field, right? So if debris, trash, vegetation, etc. block the inlet or the outlet, you're going to have a problem. So I asked the board, how would you like this scenario in your backyards? Not just the board, but anybody. How would you? Who would want? Just hypothetically, who would want this scenario? In the short term, both towns will increase in tax revenue, but when will it end, and how much of a difference is that relatively small amount of money going to make? I mean, you can't build everywhere. I'm driving here tonight, and I noticed they put a stoplight in the center of town now. So this little town of Whitman that was so nice that people wanted to live in is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's changing. It's changing rapidly, and I don't think for the better. What green areas are left? What makes living in a small town nice? Houses on top of one another, flooding existing areas from designated wetlands. Charles Macy, the builder, is probably a fine man. I asked the leaders of Whitman, you all, to tell him to build someplace else. 15 years. They've contorted themselves and done everything, gone to court, everything, to build 9 houses here. There's a reason it's taken so long for them to get approved by Abington, hopefully not approved by Whitman. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do you have a specific question you'd like to ask about the detention?
I asked him what he didn't answer.
What just procedurally, I can be interacting with him directly. You have a board, you go through the chair, and I respond through the chair. Otherwise, this will become a chaotic hearing process.
No, that's I just wanted to go through one answer. That's all.
So I'm very glad.
Why are you so deferential to him? I don't
There's no reason to be contentious. There's no.
No, but you seem to be deferring to him. Like I had a simple question. If there was a detention basin going to be installed, that's all I did. So there's my
Yes,
question.
okay. Is that what they're going to be using, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of but interestingly enough, one of the comments, which I believe is perhaps I don't know where it got his source information, but basically the information explains why you have detention basins. Okay, that's part of your stormwater management process. And the statement concerning how it's been taking 15 years and there's a contortion to make it work. There's no contortion other than we live in a country. We're not in the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, or Russia, or one of these Eastern Bloc nations where government tells you this is what you're going to do and then you do it. No, we have a due process. It's costly about Mrs. Glazer, who's actually no longer here with us. The reason it's taking that long is because people filed lawsuits, okay, which in my mind was a part of the process. And then, okay, and I explained to you that DEP said, no, we don't want you to cross wetlands. And so we have to go back to the planning board and said, we don't want to cross wetlands because DEP doesn't want that. So the project it's taking that long because we are addressing every concern that has come up. So there's no other roadway that we're coming through. The idea that we have two roadways that we're coming through is a mischaracterization of the project. What I stated earlier, which is still what is the case, is that we're coming through here. Part of the rules and regulations of the planning board was that you're going to have a secondary means of access. We went back to the planning board in Abington to let them look at that from that perspective. Every homeowner, every landowner, that's why we still live in a good nation, where we have the rule of law. We have zoning, we have drainage regulations, and we have addressed those. So we cannot make up rules as we go, because then you want to be fair to people.
Yep.
So we sat down, we took the regulations that have been passed through the town meeting in Whitman, the town meeting in Abington, and we looked at those regulations. You had an independent engineer that,
Yep, no, we understand.
so
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Byers?
Yes.
on the plan here, it shows Madison Street. Is that an actual street?
no, it's a paper street. That doesn't
Okay, so it's
exist.
very confusing on the plan.
But it's on record as a paper street.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's very confusing on the
Yeah,
plan.
right.
Looks like it's a secondary.
No, it's a paper street.
Okay, thank you.
Y'all see good? Y'all set, sir?
Go.
No, should let somebody else speak.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, he can finish if he has the floor.
Okay.
It's up to you.
How far away is it from the wetlands?
No construction is being done within 35 feet of anyone else.
35 feet. How long is this room, would you guess?
40 feet.
Seems kind of close. And why is it that the houses are being built in Abington primarily, but the detention basin is in Whitman?
It's just the way the lot is. The person who owns the lot, I'm assuming, owns parts in Whitman and in Abington.
The town owns the land.
No, I don't.
No.
But he owns the land.
We can't be doing a project.
It's not a private. It's not a town project. It's a private project.
it's a private.
Part of that land in that area is owned by the town.
I don't believe so.
There's a lot of land there.
I can't answer who. He's not building houses on town property.
No. Can't.
It is technically Whitman, but it's not owned by the town of Whitman.
Okay, yes.
So, but it is
Yes.
Whitman.
But why are 9 Abington houses gonna be built? Basically 9 Abington houses built, but the detention basin, which is a big deal, is gonna be in Whitman.
It's the way the plans work out. That's all I can answer. I can't answer why the. I can't answer that. It's just how
Does that make sense?
I didn't make the plans.
Right, but, I mean, does that make sense though? I mean, as a
Makes sense to
Whitman,
me.
is a Whitman resident
Yeah.
in your backyard?
I have South Path behind me, old cat path right behind me now. That was the same thing, sort of. Not that I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but
How big's the detention basin?
The detention basin is about half an acre.
Half an acre,
Yes.
so 20,000 square feet roughly?
More than 20,000 square feet.
More than 20,000 square
More than
feet
half acre.
of a detention basin in your backyard, you'd be okay with that? For houses in another town?
this
Thank you.
Don Byers, 20 Russell Road, which my home is off of Walnut Street. So if you take Washington Street heading towards Abington, before you hit the Abington line, you take a right onto Walnut Street. And then Russell Road is your first right after that. My backyard, my property line is actually Abington. So I sit here interested that I don't own any land in Abington. I live in Whitman, and I just so happen to have my property line, and my neighbors are in Abington. So I look at these plans, and I have a question on the legality And certainly it sounds like the owner of this land owns land in Abington and Whitman.
Correct.
Okay, fair, thank you. I have a couple comments, but I'm gonna get to a question which really is, I have concerns that people owning property in both towns, if they're able to make a decision on which town they're a resident in. Because if they choose to live on this land and be a Whitman resident, and they need to call 911, how is public safety going to get to them from Whitman? I understand how they can, down High Street, down Green Street, down Brockton Ave, and through here. So I'd be concerned about that. And also for public education, if they were to choose to go to Whitman Hanson schools, so a bus needs to now go through High Street and Green Street and Brockton Ave and then around through Wilbur to pick up one child who deserves to go to Whitman Hanson public schools. So I wonder what happens in that situation and why the lots can't be split along the property line to be simply existing in Abington. So my question is to the planning board, this comes before you, and why does it come before you? Is it because a portion of these lots are in Whitman, even though the residents are not going to be Whitman residents, however it's Whitman land?
Yes. Just because some of it is in it, it has to come before us. But all the addresses technically will be Abington residents.
And that's guaranteed?
The addresses.
Like, yeah, that's...
Yeah, so yep, Kathy Keith, Assistant Town Administrator,
Yeah.
former Assessor.
Hello.
If there is no frontage on a Whitman street, they cannot legally be signed a Whitman address. Boom.
Thank you. So the residents will all be Abington addresses.
Okay.
Wait, excuse me, Ms. J.
Yes.
What was your address, please?
Mine,
What street?
20 Russell Road.
Okay, thank you. I just got that map in front of me.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No problem, yeah. My property's not split like that, so,
It's a unique situation, I'll give you that.
right.
But that's how all the addresses will be technically Rose Place, Abington, Massachusetts. Or Road, I believe that's what it is.
Right. And visually, those lots, may I get up and
Absolutely.
point to it? I know people listening can't, but these are long rectangular lots. So the property owners would own all of that. And I'm guessing with our assessor here, there's a tax bill that will come
Yes, ma'am.
from Whitman.
Yes.
So their address is Abington, but when they buy this property, they'll understand that they'll have a tax bill they'll pay to Whitman.
Well, let's hope they will, because,
land.
yeah,
Okay.
so yes.
I'm just so
Yeah, no, yeah.
That's an
That's a good
understanding
question.
here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's all my questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
Miss?
Jane Rosado, 71 Sportsman's Trail. So Abington gets the 9 houses and we get a dumping ground?
Yes.
It's just the drainage for the water, the
Just
retention.
drainage?
That's all I can tell you. That's all I can say.
What do you mean? It's just the drainage?
It's just the detention basin. It's a leach field. Like they put on highways, they put them on every development.
Right, but it's
So
gonna be
develop
in
just
people's
to-
backyards, man. It's a half an
It's
acre.
gonna be in their backyards too.
No, it's
people
gonna
buy
be-
the
It's
house.
gonna be in Whitman.
So,
It's gonna
okay.
be in Whitman. It's not in Abington. The houses are in Abington, but this half acre of whatever you wanna call it is gonna be in Whitman, my backyard. Whitman's backyard.
Okay.
That's a big deal, man.
Okay. Sir,
I'll let Jane finish.
did you have another question, miss? I'm
Well,
sorry.
I just, I'm wondering, do you know about the water coming into Whitman? Like how it's going to affect this gentleman's backyard and
Yes.
how,
Yes, as I stated a little earlier, there are regulations that say you cannot exceed the water that's, if you have 1 gallon of water,
yes,
whether there's a project there or not, you cannot exacerbate both the rate of runoff, which is the erodibility aspect of water, right? Because you're flowing, water washes stuff away. You can't cause that problem. Number two, you cannot increase the flood stage on an abutting property. That's why they hired an independent engineer who's licensed, like myself, in Massachusetts, to deal with it. And because the regulations are dynamic in nature. What do I mean by the regulations are dynamic in nature in terms of stormwater management? The state and the towns look at now what they call municipal vulnerability. Municipal vulnerability. So before, they only used to look at the rate of runoff, how fast the water goes off the land. Now they said, we're not going to just look at how fast it goes at, because that only causes erosion. What causes flooding is how much volume of water goes off. So you have to keep that volume on your property. That's why we have detention basins. That's why we have recharge. But then, the next step that they asked us to do is they had us with the other engineer that the town hired. We go out there with the test pits to make sure that we're not going to be a water table. Because if you're going to be putting that water into water table, it ain't going to leach. And so, we did those test pits to look at the permeability of the soils. Okay? That's what we did. Now, it's unfortunate that some of those existing houses, they didn't deal with those kind of regulations. People went in, they built their house, and I can submit to you based on my analysis and all the test pits that we did. A lot of those houses are built too low. Unfortunately, I don't have a control over that. I can only control what I'm designing. And I think both the EPA regulations, the state regulations, and the town regulations, not only do we meet those requirements, we exceed those requirements. So, at the end of the day, those are the things that we need to do. That's why you have rules. That's why you have laws. That's why you have regulations.
So that's how the land is right now. You've done all that testing, but when you tear down everything that's back there and put the houses, isn't it going to cause a problem in the future with no roots sucking up what's out there now?
That's why they have those buffer requirements. That's how they have the regulations. And I'm sure, like everybody else, that when I built my house is only a tree house. And I'm sure most of the people here don't have tree houses. All the houses have foundation, which means at some point, those are trees that were removed, bushes that were removed, not to build those foundations.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
question. You've gone before the Whitman Concom.
Correct.
Is there still a public hearing open?
Correct.
So anybody here that has a concern about the water and stuff, they can go to the public hearing at the Concom, which is
January 16th, I believe.
January 16th, which really addresses more of the water
Yes, sir.
than the planning board does.
Yes, sir.
Is that right on the date, on the 16th? Is that what I read?
I believe
I
so.
believe it is.
Let me double check for you.
Just want to make sure I'm
Carol,
right.
the info for everybody out.
I know it was like
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
as an
What time and
anecdotal,
where?
just as an anecdotal, I would comment. DEP, even though they didn't want us to fill wetlands to access the property, DEP has no minimum requirement for how far your project can be from wetlands. As a matter of fact, DEP allows you to build right up to the edge of the wetlands.
to the top.
This project, the town of Whitman says we'd like to see 10 feet.
Posted.
No activity here is less than 35 feet from any wetlands. So the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So while the regulations say we can be right up against the wetlands or 10 feet, we are 35 feet. So I think that's being responsible.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir?
Thanks. I'm Alan Moore, 72 Sportsman's Trail. I didn't get an opportunity to see the plan, so are you building homes? Is that what you're building there? Or the
I'm
condominiums?
designing the homes, I don't build them.
No, but the design of the property to be homes,
Yes.
So all-
Single family homes.
they're all single family.
Yes, sir.
one of the reasons, just a quick comment, one of the reasons it came to the meeting, it seems like a common theme, and I know the board knows us too well, but we're trying to put a project here in Whitman, and I feel like I'm either looking at my future or my past, because these conversations about the wetlands, it seems that it's a common issue where property is trying to go in where it really doesn't fit. But that's just a comment I'm making. Maybe that wetland meeting will be helpful. So thanks for your answer.
All right.
Oh, sir, I'm sorry. One other question. So to change the road configuration, that was something that was required by the Abington Fire Department, is that correct?
They changed the configuration.
On the radius.
Was to avoid coming through wetlands.
Yes.
Because the planning board wanted a secondary means of access. So that if the primary means of access is blocked, the fire department can have another way of getting to the fire.
So the fire department was requiring another access into the.
Correct, and they actually sent a letter to the planning board saying that they're very satisfied. And so the planning board, based on that, approved it.
That was through Abington's planning board.
That's correct.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, just making it clear.
You know where I'm going.
So, yeah, just making it clear.
So originally, you had like a cul-de-sac, and they weren't too crazy about that, the Abington Fire Department?
No, they were okay with that. That cul-de-sac is right here, and it's still here. It's just that we were crossing wetlands. Abington Fire Department didn't have any problem with it.
Right.
DEP had a problem with it.
I got it. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Can you tell me how much footage is from the end of the property that's Whitman to where the properties of Balloon Drive is? How much footage is between where that will end and his would start?
Oh, these houses, okay, so this road here, it's about 400 feet.
400 feet before it gets to Cahoon Drive in Whitman?
Oh, it's a lot more than that, because we have about
That's what
another,
I'm wondering.
right,
Sense.
you have another 300 feet before you get to that. So total, so from the road to that will be about 700 feet.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the houses will be, the proposed houses will be no less than 600 feet. And then of course the wetlands, we're not touching any wetlands. And we're still another 35 feet from the wetlands.
Okay.
Miss?
So where are the retention basins?
There's one right here, and there's one right here.
What are you pointing at? Please?
Right here, right here.
No, what is that?
Is it, she asked where the detention
Drainage
drainage is.
easement.
So that's one, and that's one.
That's it, those two.
And this is the Whitman line?
No, that's the wetlands line. That is the wetlands. This is the
The
wetlands.
Whitman line's up through the houses.
The town line is over here.
Thank you.
When I'm looking at it. So, where's, I'm confused.
Right through the.
This is the Wilford Street that you're talking about.
Yes, that's Wilbur Street. So where's Whitman?
Right through here. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
not this one here, but it goes this whole
Right, it
house.
had a different line up
2/3
there.
of this one and 1/3 of that.
Yeah.
Right.
It goes this way.
Okay, so then the tanks are here,
Yes.
Was that the tanks, that's the road.
the drainage fields, the basin, right? And how far is, what does this line right here represent?
The wetlands, the actual, the edge of the wetlands.
I thought the wetlands were in this area.
No,
No.
you can't be building a house inside the wetlands. This is where we're developing.
So
This is
this,
wetlands line right here. This is right here.
so,
Comes across right
so
here.
this is the wetlands,
Line.
and then there's land, and then there's Whitman?
That's correct. That is correct.
So from these drainage basins to Whitman is how far?
And this is what you're recommending something else.
Yeah.
So shall we leave
So-
it there? And then we'll look for consistency.
This is his house over here.
Okay.
So there's one visible distance.
So it's not about 300 feet.
So that would be, so see right there, that's the edge of the island vision, right? See?
Yes.
So from there to there, it's about another 300 feet.
What is this like?
This is the line we're reading for this one. For this one, this
And
one.
then the drainage is going to be over here.
Probably right.
Yeah. I think it would.
And all these lots are all.
And
then it's
Oh, they're all they're shaped like this?
Yeah, 100 feet.
Because they-
Go 100 this way.
Along the government right here.
Yes,
May I
sir.
show this drawing?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is the house.
That's the.
This is your house.
This is the one right here.
This is a piece of property, it's all wetlands and owned by somebody else. This is a piece of property owned by the town.
That's the one that I was talking about.
But they're not covered in.
Yeah.
So where is this, what will this,
That's part of these lots here.
they come straight down like this?
Are you looking for the for the retention wall site? It's page 8. Down the very, very bottom. Yep. Then the thick line is the wetlands line.
Want to answer something? No,
This was one more in depth.
So all this is gonna be made wood. No, these are coming down. Right, the lots are coming down, but I'll be there, so I'll be able to see.
You can make it.
This line.
Depends where they sell the house.
Yes, we're
That makes it clearer, that's the best guy right there.
That I don't know.
That's the best guy.
Okay.
I don't know that immediately. Yeah.
Alright. Anybody else have any other questions? You all set, sir? Does that help out a little bit?
It did, yes, it's
Okay.
clearer, it's clearer, yes.
Not everyone has what we see in either, so.
Thank you.
That's why we're here. So. Anybody else have any other questions for us? Or
None of these things were ever put up to vote, huh, where you can vote, the residents can vote.
it's not up to people what they can do on their property.
We elect you guys. You're
But
elected.
as long as they meet the bylaws and everything like that, I can't tell somebody what they can and can't build on their property. That's not my job. So, as much as suppose you might want to think that, that's not, as long as they meet the bylaws and everything. Miss?
Joanne Smith, 84 Sportsman Trail. That was my question to you. Are they asking for any variances here?
They are not
Just,
site plan approval.
They have a lot of land. That's why I asked the question
Yeah.
how much footage.
correct.
Because it's 300 feet at least away from the basins, no matter where, whoever it abuts. It might about that gentleman, but it could about somebody else.
Correct.
So it's not likely that that land is all going to get cleared, other than to the point where those houses are. And they do have to meet the same setbacks as any other house in Whitman, which they are well
Okay.
within their rights. So, and actually those basins help it from going any further into Whitman. And yes, they need maintenance to keep them working properly, but when they're done right, Mr. Egan could speak to that because he's had situations where he's had to go back and revamp one that didn't work that I'm aware of, but it seems to be fine now. So that, they're held to a certain rate, and I think one of the most important things, and I've mentioned this before when you've been here for other reasons, is we go by the bylaws. And I'm somebody who aggravate the license debating and I'm not picking on him, he knows that, because that's all I have to work with.
Right.
But we've also had people who had wanted something in town, I can give you an example, and they've gone to the bylaw committee and they've gotten it rewritten. So now in Whitman, you can have an accessory apartment that's not attached to the primary home. They still have all sorts of laws, but it can be, so we had a young man come before us, beautiful home, beautiful garage. He built an accessory apartment above, but they weren't attached. And there was no way to easily put a breezeway to make it meet the bylaw. He went to the bylaw committee. It did go before town meeting as to whether this bylaw could be changed, and it was changed. So if there's a bylaw that's holding up anything that you're interested in, that's the recourse you have. But as the planning board, we don't have any say as long as those setbacks are met.
Right.
Other than if somebody comes and says, it's only 2 feet different. Can we have 2 feet? Well, we're not crazy. As long as it's not going to create a problem to the neighbors, we give them the 2 feet. But when they come and ask for 26 feet, which you recently sat in a meeting,
Yes.
that's out of the preview of what needs to be done.
But I respect that.
Just my 2 cents.
Anybody else have any comments or any other questions? No? Alright. Anybody else? Y'all on the board, alright?
Yeah.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
You want it? You can do that.
Should we motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah.
Motion to close the public hearing.
You have a motion to
Okay.
close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Alright, I'll second.
Melissa?
Second that.
Peter?
Public comment is closed. No, I'm not talking to you. I was just teasing.
This was the only thing for the public hearing was
Oh, the
this.
public. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Now we're gonna have our planning board meeting.